Thomas Lewis Johnson, let's start with him. 1836 to 1921. He was an author, he was a minister, and he was a missionary. Born in Virginia, his mother was a slave, and his father was a free man. He was sent away to work at 12 years old. After the Civil War, or the war between the states, he was freed. Then he moved to Denver, where he served as a minister there. Then he moved to the UK and studied at Spurgeon College. Now, that is a pretty cool story. There's a pretty cool story behind that, where he was trying to go, and there's a whole thing. And Spurgeon was a known anti-slavery preacher. And in fact, it was so much so that Spurgeon couldn't come to the United States because of the South making threats on his life and whatnot. And so he essentially, I don't know if he ever came once, but he essentially really never made trips to the U.S. in any kind of public way, is my understanding, because of his opposition to slavery and the Southern rejection. So that's not cool, right? That's not a good thing. And so what we've got here is him going to Spurgeon College. And so Christian education didn't always do as good as they should have, and integrating education, allowing black folks and white folks to be together, as if that should even, be a thing you're allowing. But that was the order of the day, unfortunately. But they wrote to Spurgeon about Thomas Lewis Johnson going there, and he said, "Let the dear man come," after hearing a story and whatnot. Later went to Cameroon, that's in Africa, as a Baptist missionary in 1878. Imagine going from being the son of a slave woman to getting your freedom, to going to the UK to college, to get trained, to going to Cameroon and Africa as a missionary. Being a missionary is hard enough if you're even well positioned in life, but imagine what you got to overcome, such as Thomas Lewis Johnson. Then he returned and raised support for missionaries to the Congo. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful gospel work this man did. So he returned there, okay, and then he worked with the Anti-Slavery Society. And so I bring that up because I'm making note of him being in the category here of a civil rights leader. And you see that, imagine juggling this, right? Imagine juggling being a missionary while having to live in a racist society, in a racist world, really. And at the same time, having to struggle for, basic rights. He's in the Anti-Slavery Society. Sometimes in the pro-life discussions, pro-lifers get labeled as anti-abortion. In one way, it's kind of unfair. They'll say the anti-abortion crowd and the pro-choice crowd. That's a trick they do. Sometimes they'll say the anti-choice people. So anti-choice is one thing. That's a trick. That's a sleight of hand, right? But the more I've thought about it, anti-abortion doesn't really bother me, because as the more I've been reading about these civil rights men and women who are pastors and preachers and missionaries, who also found the time by God's grace to also be involved with civil rights advocacy and things like that, like Thomas Lewis Johnson, I see a lot of times they'll say anti-slavers or anti-slavery society, such as the group that he worked with. And I say, that's a good thing to be opposed to, is slavery. So I'm okay being labeled anti-abortion, right? Because that's something we should be opposed to. There's really no good thing about it that we should be for, Then he published a work, and look at this title, how grand this title is. Africa for Christ. Wow. That sounds like a high-minded person, meaning someone who has a big vision and a big heart, doesn't it? Africa for Christ. That's not a country, that's a continent. That's amazing. He published this book, Africa for Christ, and yet look at the subtitle, 28 Years a Slave. 28 years a slave. This man was a slave. Yeah, that's what we call it, Don. That's what they call it. D new. But so check this out. Look at that. Or someone is dreaming of a vision of a whole continent being turned to Jesus Christ, and yet the subtitle of their life is 28 Years a Slave. Talk about thinking about other people first and not being a victim. And I'm not making some kind of grand, claim about, I'm not doing that. I'm just saying he didn't let his past stop him from dreaming big for the gospel. That's the only point I'm trying to make, okay? Don't read into it. But he didn't just say, he could have been the other way around, or could have just been 28 years a slave, right? Could have been all he had, but nah. Not Thomas Lewis Johnson. And these things are paintings and portraits. I don't know if there's photographs of Thomas Lewis Johnson, but even in these portraits, you sometimes learn a lot about these guys. I just kind of like looking and seeing what we can see, Check him out. Check him out here. He's got that little, the portrait artist, for whatever reason, sorry, I know this is a little bit different, but he got that little glint in his eye, the little twinkle, a little smile. You see how his mustache is going up just a little bit. His cheek is just a little bit turned up. And he's got a little bit of style, doesn't he? I mean, I'm not saying I would do my hair that way, but actually one time I did, actually. But he's doing something with it, right? And he's got a little trim going on, a little pointed beard, a little shape to it. And his eyebrows kind of on fleek. Now, this is probably some people who are serious, like hardcore people who don't ever joke around when they do history and stuff, are probably like, this guy's a travesty to the... But I like doing stuff like this because I like to think, what would it be like to know this person? Whenever I kind of look up to someone or admire them or sort of put them on hero status, like honestly, in a lot of ways I do with Thomas Lewis Johnson, I kind of like to be like, what's he really like? And this dude looks he looks a little turned up to me. I'm just saying, Okay. On to the next person. He died in 1921. And by the way, there in the link on the card, there is a BBC link I put. You can look at that and just copy it, where you can learn more about Thomas Lewis Johnson. Hey, I'm going to put that comment on the screen. Who are you? Or are you a regular? Because whoever you are, you're pretty dope. You can learn a thing or two from his mustache vocab. That's right. Hey, you know what? You can also learn a thing or two about a person by their mustache.